Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream, we work on a Django app that I've been building for a couple of years, and we add new features to it, and I walk you through my process for doing development on it and how to make a software as a service that works for actual customers. This is a real website. It's for real people, real homeschool families, which that's what the product is. And yeah, I walk you through what I know about building Django apps. So we're going to get going, and if you have any questions, you're free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. But today we're going to focus on some smaller features that were requested by a customer. Actually, my wife and I were talking about this at dinner just a moment ago. It's things that she has been wanting and things that have been in my issue tracker for a while that I just haven't dealt with. So we're going to deal with these. And this first one is hopefully a pretty simple feature about effectively having a toggle that will allow a bulk delete page to check a bunch of boxes at once. So that is the focus out of the gate. And then if we have more time, we'll get to other features as well. So let's see. Let's get started. Let's get that activated. And I had restarted my machine, so I didn't set this up beforehand. Apologies. So we want to look at what? How about this? How about we start with running the web server and showing you where this feature needs to be, and then we will move on to a place that this feature kind of already exists with a different page that we're going to use it to model how I'm going to build this. So let's fire things up. And it's going to be a good orientation for me because I don't actually remember where the feature is. I'm going to log in with my testing account, which I think this is where it is. Nope. Shoot. Maybe did I type that wrong? Well, that can't be right. Okay. Been so long that I forgot my testing credentials. Is it someone? Nope. All right. I'm gonna do this the hard way. I'm going to bring up, so what I'm doing here is I'm bypassing the website, but I'm going directly to the user database. There are two ways you could do this. You could import your user model after getting into Managed Shell, or you can use the Django extensions project, which is a pretty cool tool, and use Shell Plus. And Shell Plus will load all your models, so you don't have to remember to type out the rest of that stuff. And you can see it's loaded exactly what it imported to start, so you can save yourself some time. So I want to say for you in user.objects.all print u.email. What are the emails in here? Oh, okay. Well, that's not what I expected. Oh, you know what it is? I had to create a new test account or database or something like that. So I made this. I'm going to struggle to remember that, but such as it is. Okay. Forgot to start the web server again. We will get this party started here in a second. All right, now this. Come on, Matt. Actually logging in? What? Okay. Clearly, oh, you know what it was? I created an admin account, so it doesn't have confirmation for me. Oh my goodness. Okay. So you're seeing the sign up process, which is not what I was intending to show, but hey, here's what it is. I've got my email set up locally so that it prints out to my console. So you can see here's the message that you would receive if you were actually signing up for the service. This would be in an HTML format, but I also provide a plain text one. But here's the link. So I should be able to open this link and verify this account. And now that it's confirmed, now I should be able to sign in. Good grief. Okay. That was way more complicated than I planned. Okay. Now let's get back to the actual task at hand, shall we? The thing that I needed to do was bulk deletion of tasks. So we're going to go to Math, and we're going to click this Delete Multiple Tasks thing. And here is where my spouse is looking for an easy way to check all of these rapidly, because she has times where she wants to delete everything. So we're going to compare this to the daily view, and you can see that there's already a pattern here that says if you check this, it checks all these boxes. This is a bit of JavaScript. I suppose I could have done this with HTMX, but I didn't. So what we're going to do is essentially copy this pattern here. And how does this work? I'm not using any React or anything fancy at all. It's probably dumber than it should be, but it works. What I essentially do is I add some ID attributes to each of these tasks. And we can inspect this and see what this looks like. So we have tasks, and they will either have checkboxes on or off here. And what we're going to do is search for any input that has this name attribute, that has this prefix style, and check them. And that's what the code does. So what I'm going to do is go over to the template that powers this, which is the daily page, and we'll see how this works. The bottom of this page is where I have my little bit of JavaScript. And this is where you can see where this is really not meant to be like rocket science here. I'm using some basic document methods that are available on the DOM, and I'm doing some common JavaScript that this is kind of stuff you could search for with not too much effort. You could even use what's the one that people hate? W3 schools. Like, yeah, I think even they will document some of these methods without getting it wrong. So I created this function, and I've got this check tasks function, and where it is it's connected via an on-click handler on this checkbox. So the way this works is we add the checkbox to the top on that header bar, and we add this on-click handler that then is wired to this piece of data. And in this case, for a student, it needed the ID. But this delete page we're going to do is not going to need the ID, which we'll see in a moment. And yeah. So there's some state here. There's a bunch of things to manage. All right. So that's the page we're trying to model it after. We've seen the pattern for how that was done by using the names. I think we might need to go in here and then check what are these names on these inputs and see if there's an actual consistent pattern that we can use, because we might have to update the view on the other side as well. Nope, we've got the same task dash, so we should be able to use the same technique, I hope. Oh, we did it with class. Oh, interesting. Okay. So there's a little bit to modify here. We might not even need the IDs. This might be like pretty straightforward. And it's a different kind of page altogether. So there were some extra constraints on this daily page, is that there might be multiple students. And that was what was making this little chunk of logic harder, by getting this student ID as an attribute, or an argument rather. I guess it's a parameter. It's a parameter inside the function. And blah, blah, I'll get to your question in just a moment. So because I had to do that by a student filter, that's what made this selection of which elements we needed harder. But I don't know that ours is going to be all that hard, because on this one, there's nothing else on this page. We can probably even do this by tag type. Like the only inputs on this page are going to be, well, I guess there's a hidden one. We could do a search for checkbox inputs if we wanted to, or I could add a class. There's probably a bunch of ways that we could select this. Okay, so this is processing like what I want to do here. Let me read your question, blah, blah. And welcome, by the way. How has my experience with HTMX been? So it's been good. I have had nothing bad to say about HTMX. My app is also relatively, what's the right way to be charitable? It's not very dynamic, and it doesn't have to be. It's a lot of very server-side rendered pages. And so there aren't many dynamic features that my users have requested, partly because of the actions that need to happen are pretty atomic, and there's not a lot happening on each individual page. So as long as the experience for them is fairly quick, they haven't been antsy to say, hey, this experience is so bad, I need you to be able to like delete this one row. So there have been a couple of circumstances where I've added those features and HTMX has made it easy to add, but I haven't needed a ton of HTMX. The place where I probably have the most HTMX stuff going on is there's a feature to bulk add tasks. And so if we like go down to the science class and add a new task and use this bulk create feature, this is where I got the most. And even this was not that complicated. So it's worked by as soon as you, I think it's as soon as you leave this window, it will add more. Or yeah, there it is. So as soon as you type in some characters there, it gives you more to fill out. But it's like you have to have a character. Yeah. So it's only if there's like a key press in this one. And it did, what it was doing is going back and loading, using HTMX to load another chunk of the UI in here to give more features there. So I've been very pleased with HTMX. Nothing too crazy to report there. Okay, let's get focused on this one. And I think probably for simplicity, I'm going to use the class route rather than try and find the input tag that's right, because by going with the class route, what we can avoid is that that hidden tag, like the CSRF token. And so I don't want to be adding messing with other input tags that might be on the page, and inadvertently screwing up the data. I don't think that would happen, but it's possible. Like it could be that, well, I don't know. But I just don't even want to deal with those scenarios, so we're not going to mess with it. So let's get, that's the daily page. We need the bulk delete page, which this is the course task bulk delete, this page. We've got side-by-side views here. And so the first thing I'm going to do, so this blocks thing that I have, this block scripts, is part of my main template. So if I were to go to app base, there's a section that's explicitly for script blocks. And it's kind of dumb, like it's not even inside the script block, so I have to put the script tag as well. There's some shenanigans that I'm doing here a little bit. This could be, like, when you're looking at this chunk of code, this is actually rendered by Django. So in theory, I could be putting Django context variables in there and all kinds of stuff, but I try and avoid mixing too much of that in this area. So I want to keep this as much as JavaScript as possible, which is why I passed in the student ID. And so we can see where I'm using the actual templating stuff is up here when I'm calling it in the actual HTML section. This is where I'm using the context variables rather than below. It doesn't matter for this particular function, but I think it's just a rule of thumb. If you're going to follow along with this pattern I do, and I don't know if this is a good or bad pattern, you can be the judge of that, is maybe or be careful when you are adding Django variables and context into JavaScript script blocks. There are some potential vulnerabilities that can kind of happen. There's some ways that you're supposed to properly encode JavaScript data. If you have any kind of JSON object, don't just put a Python dictionary in here and expect it to work quite right. I want to say Adam Johnson has a good blog post on this topic. Adam Johnson, Django, JavaScript loading. I don't know, maybe that'll get some results. Hey, look at that. Safely including data for JavaScript in a Django template. So here's Adam will walk you through all the details of why this is a bad idea if you do it poorly. I'll drop the link over here. It's a good resource. But our case doesn't need any of that data. None of that matters. I was just sharing just because. In our scenario, we want to come down here and have a script block. And I'm going to keep the name. And this time I don't need the student ID. So let's delete that. And we still want to do a let on the tasks. And we still want to get the elements by the class name. But I'm going to say, instead of using, so this backtick syntax here is this is a template string in JavaScript, which we don't need because we're not going to be filling it with a variable. So I'm going to take out all of that. Actually, there are other ways to do this. So if you're using Vim, so I should be able to say change around backtick. That was, if you didn't catch that, so that's CA backtick is the Vim selection. And I wasn't even like, if you notice, I wasn't even over there. I wasn't in that element. So what Vim did is it found the nearest backtick and just like went to it automatically and like is saying you're going to change all of it. So that's super handy for a faster way to do this. And I often don't forget, or I often do forget to process things that way. But Vim has this really powerful feature called motions. And I don't really describe that too much when I'm on stream because I know not all of you are Vim users, but those that are can appreciate some of that stuff. All right, so we're going to call this task input. This is going to be the name that we're looking for. And then we're going to add, yeah, here's the checkbox right here. And all I want to do is add a class to this. We'll put it after all of this other stuff because it's kind of secondary. We'll call this class of task input. Like that. And it's really getting hard to see. So I'm going to add a new line there and indent it a little bit. So we have most of this done already, I think, with just that much. The last thing that we need to do, just like over here, we need to add an on-click handler. Well, we need to add a checkbox, I guess. We're missing a whole checkbox. So there's some styling stuff that needs to happen too. So I'm going to put in a checkbox. It's not going to be in the right spot, but we want to see functionally, is it doing the right work? So let's take what? come over here, go up to line 24, and change this. Let's put delete there. This isn't going to, like I said, I'm pretty sure this is stylistically not going to look good yet, but one thing at a time. So we need to get rid of that because we don't have a second argument anymore and we don't have student IDs. And so now we have this checkbox. This also avoids, so like let's think back a moment ago, I said one way I could have done this is by finding all of the input checkboxes and checking them. But now I'm realizing that wouldn't have worked because the clicking of this and running that method, if I did get me all of the input checkboxes, then going through that list would also check that one at the top as well, the checkbox. And so it might have actually maybe have triggered a loop. I'm not really sure. It probably would not have given us the behavior that we want. So by doing it this way with going after a specific class name, I'm really scoping it in and giving us a clear target of what to go get. So that's there, and the checkbox is at the top. We still have this running. So this is going to look probably pretty poor after we load it, but let's check it out. Well, it's not as bad as I thought. Let's click it. Ooh, so nice. All right. Now, next question becomes, how do I want to style this? I could leave this there, which, nah. It's a different style from here because the difference is like this page is specifically about deletion, so the action is on the right side, whereas this page is over here is more about the information, and there's some edit icons, and it just has a totally different feel. So all that is to say is like the header made sense to put it on the right on this one, but I don't know that it makes sense to put it on the right on this one. What feels a bit more natural to me is to actually flip it and have the checkbox be on the right, and I would like it probably to be like, wow, is that going to look weird? If it was delete over all this empty space, it might look weird. Well, let's at least try putting the checkbox after and see what that does. Whoops. What happened? Where'd it go? Whoa, weird. It did not like that at all. Or like wrapped or something? What's going on? What? I am confused. Where did it go? There's delete. Like definitely not there. Did I mess with the... What did I do? What the heck? I've got this saved over here. That's definitely the bulk delete page. All right, y'all, I'm going crazy. What's going on here? That's saved. It's after the delete. And now it's gone. What? What happened? Where did it go? That's so weird. Adapter. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your handle. It's not what is the service going to be. The service is actually live. So this is a service that's serving real customers. It's at the schooldesk.app. It's a homeschool application that's meant for what it says here. It's a planning software. So my spouse and some other customers use this to plan out the school year for my kids and set out all of the tasks that are going to be. It's the place to hold grades. It does all of this management kind of stuff. So that's what I'm building. Thanks for the question, though. And if this sounds like it must be your first time joining me, perhaps, if you didn't know what the service was. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But right now, I'm super puzzled as to where my input box went. What the heck? Why is it that it was showing up when it was before? How does this make any sense? When it's here, it's good. No, now it's gone again. Something's going on. Not cool. Is it caching or spawn? Like now it's there. And coming back to delete. Now it's there. This is super weird, because that is not, I mean, you can see that input is clearly valid input syntax. I haven't done anything wrong there. But I don't know why Django or anything would be dropping the bytes. Like, if I put it here, that has nothing to do with it. That's CSS loading, which is just watching. It's watching for file changes. I am mystified as what in the world is happening. All right. Let's go over here. We're going to go to refresh the page. Now I'm going to go to the network tab. All right, let's clear this. I want a like real clear indicator that we're going to disable a cache. There's no cache. None of this nonsense. Here's the page. Huzafe Salih, can you ask what outside of this stream? I'm not sure what your question is. Maybe I missed something. Apologies if you said something earlier. But I'm happy to answer your questions. So if you got them, fire away. Okay, so I want the raw HTML in here, and then I want to search. I search inside here. I want to search for delete. What the heck? How is this? How is Django changing my bytes in my response? What are you doing, Django? Y'all, I've been doing Django a long time, and I have never seen anything like this. This is bytes that should be in the template response, and Django should just be passing this along, and it's not. So I don't know what's happening. What the heck? Okay. It was caching. I'm confused. Like, so I stopped the server and restarted it, but Gunnicorn is supposed to be in a reloading mode. So if there are any template changes, it should pick them up. And you could see it was picking up some template changes because it was either showing the checkbox or not. I'm so confused. Okay, forget that. Oh, I don't know how to say you're a datter? A datter. I'm going to go with a datter. Very cool that you're a teacher. Early college, high school, and teach our engineering program. I'm interested. So are you you're a teacher at a early college, high school. What does that mean, a datter? Is that you're a teacher at a high school or you're a teacher at a college? I'm confused by the phrasing there. Maybe it's something that it doesn't sound to me like a U.S. school thing, but it could just be that you typed out something a little different than you meant. But it's cool that you teach your engineering program. Okay, now I'm going to stare at this and decide if I like the look and feel. Or maybe I should focus more on being consistent. Consistency in this case to me would say put the label after the checkbox, because people are going to come from the daily page and they're going to casually come to this page. The problem with this approach, no matter what I do here, is that the checkbox is not in line with the other checkboxes. And the simplest thing, that bugs the junk out of me. I don't know why that's failing. Not picking up the file changes. That's not cool. The simplest thing would be to say, that's good enough. And that's probably the smart thing to do. Because this is not a page that will get used a whole lot, I think. And I think it's going to look more weird than not if I try. Because here's what's going through my head. Let's say that I expand out the size of this column. We're using a grid system, and the column size is 2 out of 12 units. And we can see that. We can go to one of these rows, and we can inspect it, and you can see there's the 2, and there's the 10. So we got 2 and 10. It's a 12-unit grid system. Now, I might need to adjust it just because the header is barely fitting in there. And I'm worried, like if I change this, will it do weird things? No, I've got it max. Okay, never mind. It's fine. So I don't really want to cut into the space, because even though these are like short descriptions over here, real tasks in a real system can have paragraphs and all that sort of stuff, and I don't want to eat into the available real estate that a task might show if it's a longer label. But I think that I'm going to leave that. So what I was saying though is that if I expanded this out and moved delete over here, then you're going to have this weird effect there where the yellow line will extend beyond, and the delete will be like hanging out. The label itself will look like it's hanging out over nothing. And I think that that's going to raise some questions. It works over here because there's content that goes underneath that. And so you can kind of forgive it that, hey, it's not quite lined up. So that's forgivable. The other thing I might try is, you know what? I'm going to leave it. And if my wife says she hates it, then I'll fix it. Oh, this is a fascinating program adapter. I've not heard of such a school system. So we have something. So I'm in Frederick, Maryland, and we have a program that's more like it's what's it called? I'm drawing a blank on the type of schooling that it is, but it's like a vocational, sort of a vocational school. I guess that's the closest thing I can think of, where the high school students will do some of their basics and then go into more specific trades, whether that be plumbing or electrical or being a stylist, a hairstylist, or something like that. So it sounds like maybe you're in something akin to that, because they're getting their associates after 2 years. It sounds like a cool program. Interested what kind of engineering those students are taught. Okay, so the delete feature, I think works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try it out because we haven't exercised anything. I don't know why this part would break. Nothing about this should have broken. So I'm going to basically say, let's just keep we'll need these for other streams. So I'm going to keep the first 10 tasks and see if this will delete 11 through 160. Should. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. Or am I sure? Yes, I am sure. Deleted 147 tasks. There they are. All right, cool. It worked. Well, I'm still perplexed by this loading thing, but that seemed to do what I wanted it to do. Solar-powered plane? That sounds amazing. That sounds really cool. For search and rescue? Wow. Is this solar-powered plane, is it like a drone? I'm guessing this is not a plane for a human being, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. All right, so let's review the change. Turned out to be a small change. So we've added this new input checkbox at the top that has an on-click handler for this check tasks function. We pass in this because when we're in the body of the function, we need the checkbox to look at the state of its checked. Like if we want the boxes to mirror what we have checked at the top. So if it is checked, we want everything checked. If it is unchecked, we want everything unchecked. And we could see that, I closed it. We could see that as I was toggling it. And then we added the specific task input. Now this is where it gets a little spooky at a distance kind of stuff. Like there's nothing about this that makes it clear that this is connected to this. However, I don't care. And the reason I don't care is this chunk of JavaScript code is isolated to one single template. If I was using this function in many other places, then I would most certainly like parameterize this and pass this in as an argument or something like that. But this is the kind of thing where I can come down here and be like, what's this task input? If I forgot for some reason, and then find the one result on this template. So I'm really not concerned about that. So we get all the tasks, we loop over them, we set their state to checked, and that's what happens. That's the end of the story. All right, cool. There should be zero impact on the Python test, but just to make sure, let's run the test suite really quickly. Wouldn't want to commit something that borked the code for some reason, caused something not to render. And then part of me is tempted to be like, what the heck happened with the template loading stuff? Why did that not load in the way that I thought it should? But I don't know if I want to investigate that right now. We're going to commit this and we'll say add bulk delete check all box. Check all toggle feature. Fixes number. Fixes 696. Cool. That'll make my wife happy. So cool. And so I added that fixes thing. If you've not used GitHub before, whoa, whoops. Oh, come on. You have divergent branches. Let's go. Okay. Sorry, Git's being a pain, and it should just have done a rebase merge or something, but I don't know why it didn't just say merge. Maybe it's, oh, you know what it is? This is a new machine. I recently upgraded to a Mac M1, a mini M1. And I probably am missing some kind of Git config. to make my preferences global. So I think what I want to do is have git config. Let's set this at the global level and say pull rebase false, because I want to merge commit in this context. Now let's try pulling. Okay, that's what I wanted. Now we're going to push it back up. There we go. So what I was trying to say is that the fixes attribute on that commit is because I put it as part of the commit message. Git will detect that it's the word fixes, and you have to do fixes and then a number, an octothorpe and then the number, or a pound sign or a hash mark, whatever you want to call it, and it will automatically close something. Fixes is not the only word that you can use. I think you can use closes, or there's a handful of like words that GitHub will recognize that you can do if you're using GitHub issues. Oh, 6-foot wing drone, large deserts and mountains. Wow, I am super impressed with your project here. That sounds really cool. You're training your model with Unreal with a terrain map. You're using OpenCV. Wow, that sounds like fun. I know that if I had those kind of projects, if I was a high schooler, that'd be a blast. And it sounds like a really cool experience for them to learn as well. Let's look at another issue. Now, this is the second thing that I was chatting about at dinner time. It is a feature. Now we're going to actually do something on the daily page. So I had to make a change because of, I'm trying to think of why the change had to happen this way. I'll describe it. I'll show the template, then we'll see. So here's the problem that I'm trying to address with this next change. We've got a save button here, and we have another save button here. And the question is why? And the reason is that this save button goes with this student, and this save button goes with this student. My wife is telling me that this is annoying. She wants to review the daily page. So this is how you mark off your activities. Hey, Coatley, welcome. Glad you're joining in. We just started a new issue. So we just finished one, so you're ready to start something new. So my wife reported that this capability here is kind of annoying. Like sometimes it's what she wants, where she only wants to modify the tasks for one student, but really most of the time when she's coming in here, she's reviewing her day, like she's at the end of the school day, and wants to mark all of the tasks that my two kids have done. And so she wants to be able to hit one button that saves all of it after it's done. Now, why did I do two save buttons? Well, once upon a time, it was actually just one save button, but I hit some kind of error. Some browser changed out there, which made me have to make a change, and I was kind of stuck. And I was stuck with what? I was stuck with, because there were two forms. So the way to read this template is there's a schedule for each student in the school. So I'm looping over each of these schedules, and that's what you're seeing here. It's a schedule rendered out of here's what they did for the day. And notice that this is a for loop that has a div, and inside of the div is the form. Okay? So the problem, might have some problems with this. I'll think on this for a moment. The The problem that I was experiencing is that whenever some browser change happened, I used to have like one save button for the whole thing. Or you know what it was? I had one form for the whole thing. And the form, I think it's coming back to me now. It's been a while since I messed with this page. It had to do with print layouts. So notice I have this print break after page thing. So when I wrapped this entire chunk in a single form, it was breaking the print view of this. So one of the features that was requested by my users was that when you go to print a page, which is something that they commonly want to do, or like here's your activities for the day, they wanted it to be one page per student. So that's what this break after page does, is it basically makes sure that this div is on its own on a page. But the form was wrapping up the whole thing, and for whatever reason was preventing the browser from allowing that kind of page flow, that page break. So I solved that by moving the form inside of the div, inside of this page break, and then putting the form here. Now, that's where the problems came up though, is that it caused me so that there's now two save buttons, and you can only save one student at a time. So if we want to do a save all, we're gonna have to do something dynamic in order to like basically fetch all of the inputs of all of the forms, group that into one set of data, and submit the whole thing. I think we can do it. It's just a question of how. So that's where we need to think about some of this stuff. And it gets complicated actually because we needed to have some things be off or on, because the logic on the other side needed to see all of the tasks to know what to toggle. Because what was happening, one of the conditions of this is like, you want to be able to undo a completion of a task. And without one of the modifications I made, so if like right now, these are unchecked. So imagine this is all one big form submission. So these three tasks are checked. In the post data that would go to the server, it would send these three and not send these at all. So they would be just completely absent. And that was a problem. If you wanted to say, actually, you know what? I want to undo this one by unchecking it. If you don't send it at all, you don't send any signal to the server that you want to modify science stuff 1. All right, so that's the tricky part. So what I had to do in the template was I had to capture in the hidden state, I had to capture when we wanted it off, so that the code on the other side can explicitly look for when the state value is off and can flip appropriately. So it's not as easy as just have one input box and the other check it or not, even though it seems like it should just be that easy. But it's that undo feature of this that is where this becomes challenging. And we can't just look for the absence of a set, because there's not a logical grouping for this, because the scheduling logic that builds this schedule is actually pretty complicated. So to do what we need to do, I think we need to have some kind of, well, here's my initial thought, and we'll work through if this is a good idea or not. My initial thought is to have a separate form that is just empty, except for one thing. Like I don't want to pull in the CSRF token again. I guess I could, it wouldn't hurt. Because this is going to render a hidden tag. There's that field. Yeah. So, all right, let me pause and think for a moment before I just spew my mouth. Okay. So the reason some of the stuff works is that notice that the name attribute has a task that has the student ID and the course task ID in it. That's key because the code on the other side has to differentiate between students. The reason is that you can have students that are in the same grade, and so they could be assigned the same task for the same day. And you could have classes like piano. You can see it here. Piano has piano lessons 1, piano lessons 1. So even though these two students are in different grades, there are some courses in their grades that can be shared. So the task ID, this is the same task ID as this one. It's the same task. So you have to be able to like use both the student, like to say who completed it, you need both the student and the task ID. But that is also a unique identifier. So it kind of gets me to the point where I think I could loop through my naive version of this. I'll just say it out loud and then we can refine it if it's different, if it's wrong, is to say, get all of the forms that are on the page, look up all of their input fields, and pull all of their input fields into one thing, and send all of that data in one submission. Because if you look at the form itself, the form URL is the same for every schedule. There's no, like, it's not encoded for a student. It just has this next attribute on it. And so, yeah, there's really nothing there. So the code that we want is basically going to be a button. It'll be a little bit like our last one, although it won't be a checkbox. The button will have an on-click. The on-click will get all the forms, and then it will do a sending of all of the data, looking at all the forms. The challenge is we kind of have to build up all of that form data into one format, and that's what I'm not positive on the best way to do. So here we're going to learn. Here we're all going to learn together. So I think the natural thing to do, if I had to guess, is to use the fetch API. The fetch API is like the built-in way for JavaScript to do AJAX requests. And so let's look at the site called Can I Use. Can I Use is a really good website, and that I'll drop a link in the chat. So Can I Use tells you your browser compatibility of what features are available. So you type in what you want to do, what feature you're looking for, and you see which ones you can use. So here we're looking for the ability to use fetch as one of the APIs. And it's looking like every version of every browser that I would care about supports fetch these days. Like here we are. Firefox has supported it since version 40, released in 2015. So no problems there. No problems on Chrome, which is also supported since 2015. So it's a pretty safe API to use at this point. Now, that being said, I haven't actually used fetch in a lot of stuff. I've used generally other tools, and I haven't done a lot of JavaScript, frankly, in a long time, like a lot of serious JavaScript. So my experience is more like using libraries that will make AJAX requests on my behalf, and not using the native API. So I actually don't know fetch that well. So let's see if we can go learn about it. There's the spec. Do I want the spec? No. So this website that I like to use for learning about web stuff is MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. And it's a fantastic site. So I want to go to, there we go, using the fetch API. So I want to make sure it does what I need it to do. Because there's things about when you switch to Ajax that you have to consider that are kind of handled for you automatically when you're doing a regular form submission. And that stuff basically entails what does a form do for you? Like it handles the loading of the next page. An Ajax request is just going to keep you on the same page. So we have to do that ourselves if we're going to change this UI. And it gets complicated because the location that we want to go to can potentially vary. So with a normal post request, actually let's look at this now. Now we finally get to look at some Python code. It's been a while, but we can. So let's go to the core views, and we want to go to daily. Daily. So here's the daily view, and one of these should be a post. So here's where we're doing all this custom processing. There's a bunch of stuff in here I'm not going to go through, but notice what happens at the end. It does an HTTP response redirect to one of two places. It does this based on this success URL parameter. And so it's done a bunch of work, and it's figured out, is there this action to do? One of the things that is in my system is if some of these tasks have grades, they're like assignments that you have to do. When a user completes the task, they get taken to a grading page so that the parent can insert, like, you got a 95 on this assignment, or whatever grading scale you use. So we can't just say, go refresh this page. That's not going to work. We have to pay attention to the actual place to go. And so it's always going to be one of three places. It's going to either be the grade URL that's defined here in that helper function, or it's going to be coming from the get request. If there is a next attribute, there's going to be a URL there. Or if none of those things are true, it is going to go back to this daily page. So when we use the fetch API, this promises to, unless it's like a 500 response, which it shouldn't be, this promises to always return an HTTP response redirect, which means it's going to have a location attribute in the HTTP header. So we need to use that when we're doing where do we want to go next. So the flow is going to be something like this. It's going to be get all the forms that are on there, get all of their input attributes, put that all into the data, make a fetch post request to the endpoint of the form, and get the response back, inspect the response, and look for the location header in the response, and then do a call in JavaScript to reload the page to whatever that location header says. So that's the flow. So that's a bunch of steps. We're going to try it out. We can probably do silly versions of this that don't do anything and just get something working, and then we'll build up. So I think the first thing I want to try and get is, can we get the fetch logic working appropriately? That'll be a good start. So let's ignore collecting from the forms and all of that other business right now. Just can we do the fetch stuff? Okay, so let's go back to the daily template. Now remember, the daily template already has a script section. So we need a new function in here. And what is it going to be? We'll call this function save all. Sure, why not? for the moment, let's just see if we can, let's do this one step at a time. Let's take small little steps, especially I'm not doing any unit testing here, so we have to make these small choices. This is the other downside of my approach is I don't generally do a lot in JavaScript, so I actually don't have any unit tests for my JavaScript code. That's a risk that I've been taking on with this project, but I'm okay with that because I'm testing these things, and a lot of this doesn't really, it's so simple that it doesn't really change that much. So we'll say hello world as the first thing. And now we've got our little save all call. The next thing we need is we need to wire this to a button, right? So let's go to some place on the page. Where are we going to put in this button? Ah, sigh. I could put it in line up here. I could put it at the bottom. At the bottom, it's going to feel a little weird, I think, because we're going to have save for the student, and then we're going to have a save all button. And I was also talking to my wife about like this probably should save. Let's say like save marks tasks, save phase tasks. Maybe we'll make that change in this process too. So I think what I want to do is put a button up here-ish. That's not following my conventions though. I think what I need to do is put a button in this style, kind of left aligned, and see if that works. It's going to look a little weird, I think, because it's going to have like this style and this style and this style and then this. And I don't want it to be a hover button. Like it needs to be a clear thing, like it's an action, which in my app, actions are blue. All right, but do what we need to do. And I'm also going to get bothered if those templates are not rendering properly. That might be when I figure out whatever is going on there. Whoops. Wrong buttons. Let's go to the course page. Steal some buttons. So here's a section. We're just going to take the whole thing. And we're going to drop it right after the print link. Move it in a little bit. Take out this. Oh man. I do want to wrap this. So I want to change this to if, instead of if course tasks, I want this to be if schedules. We don't want this save all button to be there if nobody has anything scheduled for the day. And then I want just one of these links. I don't need all three. So let's delete that one and that one. And then we can probably zero out this URL for the moment. Or it might be permanently, because this is going to be handled by an on-click. Oh my word, I'm just going to, there. Whoops. And we'll say, what? Come on. Save all. Okay, coming back over here. Got a save all button. Worked that time. What's the deal? Why is it showing one time and not another? Weird, weird, weird. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is connect this to an onClick. We say onClick is equal to, how did the other one have to wrap it? Okay, you got to wrap it in quotes. It's like so weird. OnClick is such a weird thing. I don't use it much. So OnClick, we want to do save all, and that's it. That's the whole thing. Yeah. So we'll refresh the page again. Now I'm going to bring up the console, and we had hello world, and it's writing hello world. So we've wired the onClick handler appropriately to our function at the bottom. So now it's time to do some stuff. And now I'm thinking about how I want to do some stuff. I could so this is the action. The action is determining where to post to. So the method is a post. The action is telling you where. It's kind of poorly named, but that's what it is. But you can see that we've got some Django context in here that takes the URL path and does some URL encoding on it, blah, blah, blah. And the reason it's doing that is so you end up at the right place back when you want to come back. What I don't know is if fetch can take this form where it doesn't have any kind of prefix on it. I suspect it can, because it's probably no different from the form submission itself. And so there's two ways I could go about doing this. I could either, in my save all thing, look for a form and then take its action parameter, or I could pass in the URL right here. The same thing. I think I'm leaning towards the version where I get it from the form. Seems like it might be a little cleaner. So we need to have, all right, so what do we need to do then? We need to be able to get the first form that's in here. So we know that this button is only going to render if there are schedules. Oh, but the schedules could be a break. Ah, dang it. I was about to say we could have confidence that we're going to have a form on the page, and it's only going to be one of these forms that we care about for submission, but we may not have a form on the page. And, oh, junk. There might be another form on this page. Let's look at the source. Look for form tags. There might be more than we think. Form? Why is it saying 153? Oh, I got debug toolbar on. Hold on a second, y'all. I'm going to just, I didn't create my privacy thing, so I promise this will say be right back as if I'm leaving for a long time, but this is just so that I can turn off the Django debug toolbar. I'll be back, but I have to do it in a place where I've got secrets and stuff, so I can't show you this. So I gotta turn this off and I'll be back in like 30 seconds. Okay. I have not done a transition, so let me see if my audio is still working. All right. Too much behind the scenes stuff. Apologies. So now I'm going to run this again, So now debug toolbar should be off. So this thing should go away. I think that's where all those forms were coming from. Okay, there, it's gone. Well, let's refresh this. This page gets substantially smaller because it's not loading in the debug toolbar stuff. And if we look for form, now we got 6. Okay, still more than I anticipated. So there's the open and close on the first student. There's the open and close on the second student. Now here's where I thought there might be one last one. The logout page also uses a form. So what we need to do is make sure we get the right form. And the way that I want to do that, how do I want to do that? We could do like I did with the class filtering. Trying to think of ways that this might blow up. Because I think there is one in here that could mess me up. There's one set of logical scenario this could not go well. And might as well describe it. So here's what could go badly. I've got this for if schedules, right? And then the problem is that this problem is right here. So it's possible that everybody has a schedule, but everybody is on break. And in that case, there will be no forms that we care about on this page. So in my logic for the save all button, I only want this to like work when there actually is a form that this could work on. Because if there are no valid forms, then why have the save all button at all? That would be bad user experience. So we need to somehow like do the extra checking and show this save all when there is a real break. I'm trying to think if there's any way to do that with a template tag that exists. Because there's not a Boolean for the whole set of schedules. It's not like something that we can just do. So what we're really looking for is we want to say like, if all of the schedules are breaks, then don't show this button. Yeah. So it would be something like in regular Python code, just pretend this is regular Python code for a minute. So if all schedule dot is break for schedule in schedules. That's the condition that we don't want to show it. So if they're all breaks, there's not going to be a form. All right, let's go to the Django template tags. Template tags built in. See if there's a template tag that will help us do an all or any. I don't remember there being one, but I could be wrong. Yeah, bummer. None of these look like what I need. Filter. First of outputs the first argument variable that is not false. Man. See if there's a way to do this. Maybe somebody's documented this on Stack Overflow. Django template tag any. Custom tag. I'm not making a custom tag for this. Come on. So apparently the answer is no. So what could I do? I could say, all right, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it's not worth thinking about this case that hard. Like if there's a schedule and both people are on break, the average user is not going to click the Save All button, even if it exists. I think that's, I'm convincing myself that I don't actually need this logic, that I'm just gold plating. So let's leave the logic simpler then. And let's make the assumption that we're going to be able to find an appropriate form. Now, which form do I want to take though? This is where we can cheat. It's not cheating. This is where we can take advantage of the features of the language. And I'm going to say class equals, I don't know, student form. That way that we can look for this specifically and not like get the logout button because we don't want to log the user out by accident. So we're going to look for the student form. And we'll say, now it's going to be a list. So how can we get one out of that list? Get elements. Is there a get element by class name? There's get elements, but is there a singular one? Otherwise, we might just pull the first one. Check the length, make sure it's there, then pull the first one. Yeah. Okay. Let forms equal document get elements by class name, and then we're going to look for student form. And let's console log the forms for now. See what we get. Did it again. Son of a gun. No, no, no. Cache disabled. Oh. It's like it does one reload fine, but the next one it doesn't? What's up with that? That's what I expected to see. Man, that's going to drive me crazy. I'm going to have to figure that out. So we get a collection, and you can see it's got the 2 student forms in it, and they correspond. Like, you highlight it, there it is. It's got the whole form. And the other one's down there by the other student. So what I want to do is I want to grab the first one, effectively, and then I want to say inside that form, give me the action. So I should be able to do that. So let's do that on the console here, because I think it will do what we want to do. So we're going to do forms equal to document, get elements by class name. Effectively the same thing we have in the function. Student form. Okay. What? On Mo's full screen is deprecated? I don't even know what it's talking about. It's weird. Now, forms dot, or can we do an index on it? Will that work? Ooh. So we can index it, it seems. What else do we have on this? Got a length. Length is 2. We're going to check that. Not that many properties on here. Cool. So we want to do a length check. So if forms length is greater than 0, then we want to do stuff. Otherwise, we just want to skip this whole thing. We don't want anything to happen. So then we'll say let form equal forms 0. And, or actually, you know what? Forms 0. Can I say action directly? Action. Oh, look at that. Man, when did the web get so nice? This used to be way harder, y'all. So let's change this. So we got our action. Or let's call it what it is. It's really our URL. That's where we want to go. So now we know where to submit stuff. And this is where I said we should be able to submit and then do the redirect. Now, this is going to fail for reasons that we shall see in a moment. But it won't fail when we actually do all the work of getting all the inputs out of the form. And as I'm writing this, I'm wondering if, can we submit? Because we're going to need to use the forms more in a minute. So let's say form equal forms 0. What does this have on it? Because we're going to need to get the inputs out of this, right? So where are the inputs? That's going to be fun. There's a lot of very standard looking attributes here, because this is some kind of HTML node. And all right, we'll probably have to look some stuff up, because I gotta believe that there's a way that you can say, with JavaScript, given a form, give me all the inputs of that form. so we don't have to like do something bonkers. A ton of on handlers that are probably tied to something. Query selector is probably what we're going to use. I bet that's going to be query selector to get the actual inputs. Sorry I'm making you watch me go through all of these. I thought this would be quick, but apparently not. So there's no obvious API to like directly get all the inputs, which makes sense. I guess it's not really, HTML is, there's no guarantee that there's even going to be any inputs in there, so they don't want to assume. They're trying to make it as generic as possible. But here we can do, what we can do is log the URL. Now that we're at this stage, we refresh this page. Oh, that drives me bonkers. Django. Template reloading is like a thing already. I wonder if I need to you know what it is? You know what it is? I got it. I'm so used to using Python so that GUnicorn will do a reload when you change a Python file. And so all of this stuff is in memory in the Django app right now, but we're not actually causing GUnicorn to reload because we're only changing an HTML file. And so it doesn't know to do anything differently. So somebody pointed this out. So this is the version, a simple GUnicorn config script that can be used to add your Django template file directories. Yeah, somebody commented here. Got water on my keyboard. Whoops. So there's some, it does some reload searching. We can, I guess, let's test this theory. Now we get a test. Let's go to a Python file, which I know it will reload. Say core views, sure. And I'm going to put a comment at the top. Hi. All right, see, there we go. Now we got this modified, so it restarted the workers that are associated with this. Now I bet if we come back over here and we refresh this page, and I click Save All, aha! Now we're getting what I expected. So we're not getting reloads for templates. Is there an easier way to do this than that person's config script? Because that's not really cool. I mean, good on them for coming up with a solution, but there are ways that this fails. Like, this fails if, what's a way this can fail? Imagine you add a new file. So it's only going to know about it when you start it up to GUnicorn. It's not really watching the whole thing. Looks like there might be reload extra file takes a directory option. So I might need to just pass in a templates directory. Okay, let's look at my proc file. What? Reload. Maybe it's in the environment. env example. There it is. Unicorn command args reload. That's in my example. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to try. So all of my templates are in a single directory, in the templates directory. So let's make sure we understand this setting properly. And then I'm going to essentially put in something like reload extra files, or whatever it was called, with templates. I'm hoping that'll be what I need. Or extra file. Unicorn. Settings. Was I just there? Oh, I was just there. Reload. Extra files. Oh, interesting. The command line option has no S. What, guys? Gals, whoever wrote it, I don't care. What is that? Like, really? Whatever. So we've got reload extra file, and I'm going to give it templates as a directory. See if it will like that. I don't know if it will. I don't know if it wants to like have this be all specified. In which case, I'm kind of up a creek. Because, yeah. All right, so I've got to turn this off again because I'm going to be messing with the env file that has secrets in it. So I'll be right back. Okay. I'm back. Effectively, what I did is exactly what I showed in that template sample. Just added it to the place where this will actually find it, hopefully. And it doesn't actually print out all the settings, which is kind of annoying. So you don't actually know if I got it right. But let's see. We have the oh man, did that preview? Did that seriously just go over? Son of a gun. Yikes. What was I saying? All right, so let's delete that comment. So we can see that that worked here. Now, let's see if we can get the same thing on that daily. We can modify that file, and if it picked it up, my setting change worked. Hi. Nope. Dang it. I don't think it worked. Okay, well, we have a hack around it. We know that we're changing Python files will do the trick. So that's what we'll deal with. And I'm going to check one more thing. I'm going to turn this off for just a second. I'll be right back. Okay, good. This is a new machine. I was realizing just a moment ago, maybe you were observant and you noticed it, or maybe you were less observant. But what I did was I have my preview thing here, and I was going through these here, and I passed over the .env file, and it's got the preview. And so it would have shown you any secret that I had. So I gotta watch out for that. Thankfully, this is a new computer, which I didn't think about until just now, but all the settings in here, there's nothing sensitive in here. I haven't put in any secrets in this file yet. Like, this is local, so even if this means nothing, even if you had that. So this is what I tried, and it didn't work. Juan Carlos, So I gather from your question that you don't have experience with CSS itself. So here's my dilemma in offering advice to you. When I looked at Tailwind, I did have experience with CSS. So take my advice with a grain of salt, knowing that I had knowledge that maybe you don't have. I do feel that Tailwind, the website itself, does a pretty good job of explaining CSS, or explaining, like, let's check it out. Let's look at an example. Let's just pick margin. So what they will do in the documentation is they'll walk you through all of these examples of what margin does. And the docs are actually pretty great for that. Like, you can see, like, here's an example of different margin classes. What you don't necessarily get out of that is what was margin. Like, you may not have even known that this is the name of the spacing that goes around elements. I mean, you can think about it if you think of a book and like the margin in a book. Like, you could get there. And so that's where knowing CSS would be to your advantage, of knowing what some of the attributes are. But check out the docs themselves. What they do is they tell you what their class name is, and then they tell you what it maps to in CSS, which is pretty brilliant, I think, as a way to both learn Tailwind and learn what CSS does. So let's say you're like, okay, I get that this concept is about margins, it's about spacing around stuff. And then you look through their examples and you see, I've got MT6, so margin top 6, like that's what it kind of breaks down to. Margin left 2, and you can kind of see their like relative numbers, and you start to get a feel for that. And then you get this MX8 does some margin over here and margin over here, so on the horizontal side. And so they explain all of that. And so you get to learn all of those aspects of it. And then you can go back up to the top and you'd be like, all right, now, so I know in my head, I know what MX8 means based on their definition. Where is it in this list? And you can kind of scroll through these, there's a bunch of them, but you get to this and you're like, oh, MX8 means this. It means margin left 2 rem. So you might have to go look up what 2 rem is. It's a relative pixel size. It's a relative sizing number. I don't remember what rem fully means. Anyway, so you can go look it up and look up what these attributes are. So to answer your question, I would actually use Tailwind's own documentation for learning Tailwind. It's pretty great. They will explain a bunch of this stuff. There's a lot here. It is meant to be largely a reference for using Tailwind, so you can get like don't feel the need to like learn every little detail here. Some of these things you'll be like, I don't really care about this for now, until you need it. Until you're like, well, I need to do something with text. Let me go look at these text things. And then there are. It depends on how much money you're willing to shell out. There is, I've not actually taken this yet, but Refactoring UI is a probably pretty awesome book. I've heard rave reviews about it. I've had it on my wish list for a long time, but I've never pulled the trigger on buying it. The full kit's like a couple $100 or something like that. Probably worth every penny. But you might be a student and may not have the resources to do that, which is totally understandable. So there's also Tailwind UI. What's it called? They have a basically a website where they sell. Yeah, tailwindui.com is where they have all these pre-built components. And one of the beautiful things about Tailwind, and the reason why it's as popular as it is, in my opinion, is that there's not all these like custom classes to build stuff. It's a composition of a lot of different classes on your HTML. And so you can like inspect any of these things and you can see what they did. There's no mystery here. Like these are the classes they used. That's it. So they have a sampling here. And if you actually buy Tailwind or this Tailwind UI, you get full access or all access, you can pay a bunch of money. Still it's pretty sizable amount, but it gives you access to tons of stuff. So depends on how much you want to shell out to learn. If you're going the free route, I think the Tailwind UI, the Tailwind CSS site alone is a great resource for learning. What is this? Yeah, there's probably a bunch of stuff on here that is good as well. These guys do a lot, and their content's really good. So that's my recommendation. All right, getting back to this. I am leaving Reload alone. We're not going to mess with it. I at least know what the problem is now, so it makes me feel better. And if I want to reload, I can kind of keep a Python file on the side. And we can do that. Actually, let's rotate this. Whoops. Where were we? We were down here. We had just checked if the link was there, and we've got the URL. So we saw that the URL was there. That's where we want to submit to. So I think we're ready to do an actual fetch request to the URL. Let's do that. Let's clean up some of these tabs. We don't need all these. Oh, right. We're going to get how we get forms too. It's okay. We'll leave that alone. That was a dead end path. So it sounds like we have to check the status code maybe. Although if it's a bogus status, I don't know what we'll do any different. I'm looking at just the details of this documentation, trying to understand it. Fetch won't send cookies in cross-origin requests. And it won't get any cookies in cross-origin requests. So cross-origin is when you're switching from one domain to another. And in my usage here, it's all in the same domain. So these bullets don't apply. Same origin. I think that's all okay. So this is really what we're after. We want to do a fetch, and we're going to get a response, and that's sort of it. So we get a response. Wonder what the response object is. Oh, there it is, right there, response objects. As you have seen above, response instances are returned when fetch promises are resolved. Okay. We've got the status text, response okay. There's got to be more than that, surely. Like, how do we get the location if it's a redirect? Body, options, headers. Let's just do this for now. Let's take the response and log it. So we're going to do fetch. How do we do a post? Fetch. Oh, shoot. Because that was probably a get request. My request. Okay, what's the fetch API, y'all? Oh, you gotta pass in. What? You gotta create a request object? Ah, phooey. Guess there's no like simple form for this. This is like using it, and then here's the details. This is like the API part. That's probably what we want. So you say fetch resource and then fetch options. Options is a literal. Okay. I know there's going to be a failure here. I'll just tell you what it is right now. It's going to fail with CSRF. That's what's going to fail. We're going to pass in the URL, and I'm going to pass in the options, but we're going to not include. Ooh, look at that. Oh, I don't have to code this. That's exactly what we want. This is why you read the documentation. Cool. So we want something like this. We're going to do fetch, and it's going to be an object literal. So we're going to do method, and on the other side will be post. And then we need, what was it called? Redirect? Automatically follow redirects. Oh. That's not what we want. So that's like if you get bounced to multiple places. But that's not the behavior we want. We want to change the page, because this is more than just, we're doing more than just an AJAX request. So that's not what we want. We'll go for something else. So for now, let's drop this and then close that off. I never get the chaining style right, or how people do it. It's like, yeah, we have it here and then it's indented with a dot then. It's kind of strange. Okay. Dot then. We want to do, takes an anonymous object or an anonymous function. We can do an arrow function like this. So the response is going to be the input to that function. And then this is the body part of it. I want to do a console log of the response, I think. And end it with a semicolon. Okay, let's try this much. And I guess I need to come over here and poke this. There we go. Refresh this page. Let's see. Let's go over to the network tab, clear this, and hit save all. Should actually do a post. Did a 403. That's what I expected. So it says forbidden. Why does it say forbidden? Go to the response. Here's what I thought would happen. The CSRF verification failed. So that failed because we need to pass in the CSRF token, which is a hidden field, which we can, let's say we could probably get from the form, but we still haven't looked up how to get all the inputs out of a form. Okay. DOM get form inputs. Elements? Ooh, what's that? Returns a form controls collection listing all the form controls contained in the form. Oh. Let's go poke at the DOM, like we did a moment ago, and say forms equal document get element by class name student form, right? And then form equal forms 0 form elements. Oh, look at that. Neato. Almost. There's a button in there. What? God, it was so close to being exactly what we wanted and then include a button at the bottom. What? That's bizarre. And then it did. What the heck? Has a hidden type repeated here and at the bottom. Oh, I see. I just didn't scroll down enough. So it repeats them in a weird way, or weird to me because I've not seen this before. Gotta move around a little bit. I'm sitting too much. So we have a length. We have a length. That's what we care about. But I want to exclude. How do I exclude this button type? It's annoying. Independently, you can obtain the number of form controls using the length property. Does that mean I can like index the form? What if we say form 0? Okay. So form length is 10. We saw that we have all of these numbered attributes. Geez. 0, so it's indexing into this thing. It's almost like a key lookup, as if it was an object. So we can get all that information. But that's not what I was hoping to do yet. I really just want to get this one, the CSRF middleware token, and get the value. We need to submit that data with the fetch. So this is going to be a post. So how do we set post data? So it looks like we put the resource, and then in the options, we have to include the method, which we already have. And I guess the body is what we want. So the body takes that form data. Let's go read about this. Form data interface provides a way to easily construct a set of key value pairs representing form fields and their values. Cool. But how do we get the form data? How do we build that? Form data constructor. Can we get it from that other, can we get it from this thing? Form data? Appears not. Nope. We were just reading what? We were reading the form controls collection, right? That's the thing that we were looking at. Where'd I go? This is a form controls collection. All right, there's got to be, so form data from HTML form controls collection. Or is that what the elements thing is? No, the elements is the form controls collection. Form dot elements dot, what do we have in here? Not much. Bummer. Okay, back to our search. And we don't have form data. Oh man. Okay. Let's go read the docs for this. As named item. There's really not much in this thing. Maybe the form element has another way to get the data we want. accessing the form's elements. You can access the list of the form's data containing elements by examining the form's elements property. It still doesn't feel right. Like, what? Why would he? I don't get it. Like, how are you supposed to? I don't know how to take the form container. Oh, is that how this works? Thank you, Juan Carlos. Let's go. Maybe I just didn't read. Sometimes it's like hard on stream reading documentation. There's a constructor. So for this somewhere, creates a form data. Form data. Oh, look at that. Well, interesting. Now, here's the problem. The whole goal of this is to create, like, smash together two forms. So can I combine forms? That's my next question. Let's look at the form data. Thank you for setting me on the right track, though. That definitely seems like the right answer. We want to get the forms or the form data and then combine it with another form. And it seems like this constructor only took a form object. All right, so let's start with what you suggested. Let's play with it on the console, see how it turns out. We've got, we'll call it, we'll do like just like you did. Form data is equal to new. Oh man, it's been a long time since I used a language that used new. Goodness. New form. Form data. Why does it seem like it's empty? What? Form has 10 elements in it. All right, what are we missing? Form data. Oh, maybe it's a DOM element, not a. Although I have the DOM element. Pretty sure. An HTML form element, when specified, the form data object will be populated with the form's current keys and values. Okay. Get element by ID. Like, isn't that what we have from that class? The forms list? It's an HTML collection. Forms 0 is the form class, right? So let's say forms 0 in case no, it seems like it's empty. What's going on? Just got the prototype on it. That's not right. All right, well, I think I'm gonna have to throw in the towel this evening. This has been interesting, though. We're making some progress, but maybe not as quickly as I'd hoped. So we got this little form thing. It's in progress. So what do we need here? We need to let's leave us some breadcrumbs because we'll get it this time. Need to to do get the form data from all form elements build into a single form data object and submit the form data as the body to the fetch options. Sound right? I'm still puzzled by what happened here. That definitely looks like a form with some stuff in it. That is most certainly what we passed to form data. Do you have a gist? I don't see a link there. Maybe, I don't know if YouTube swallowed the link. I don't know how to, I'm sorry. There we go. Okay. Was that right? Yeah, YouTube is not showing me your gist, so I don't know if it's trying to protect me from weird, nefarious links. I have no idea. I appreciate you trying, though. So here's what I'm going to do. I will hopefully offline remember to look into this particular chunk and figure out how to get the form data. I also need to figure out that, like I said, we need to smash the form data together to combine for one like mega form submission, which is probably not a common thing to do. So maybe there's I'm gonna have to do some searching for combining forms, and then we'll submit that. That should give us the CSRF token that will get us past that 403 error. And that daily view, we didn't spend much time looking at that code, but that view does, like, it tries to be very flexible and not fail ever, unless something was going wrong with the server. So there's not a lot of error handling that I think we'll have to do. We can just kind of trust that it's going to work. That's not always the best policy, but I think it will work for this context. And then the other half of this, okay, let's write down the other half. So what do we do in the chain? Like this, right now we're going to log the console response, but what we really need to do is we need to take the response. Response had some headers in it, I think. One of those is going to be the location header. And you can set, and I never remember exactly the right way to do this, but it's something like, I think it's going to look something like this. It'll be window. Oh, I don't remember. There's a way to set the window to a new URL, which will like cause a redirect, basically. So if we say redirect to, let's try it, just URL equals / will that work? No, that's not it. We'll have to look it up. But it's something along these lines where you set a URL attribute on the window somewhere, and it will change the URL and actually do a new request to your browser. And so that's how we're going to force the redirect onto a new page after we get to the response. So our response coming back from the successful request from that view should be a 302 or 301. I can never keep those straight. Some kind of redirect response. And then we will pull out the location header, which is what a redirect response will put the place you want to go to in a location header. And once we have that, we can set it on the window, and it'll take us to that place. So that's the whole thing when we're all done, and it should complete the whole flow. So what the piece we're missing is like that building of the form data and setting it, and then setting the other side. But I need to do some research on some DOM APIs that I haven't touched in a very long time, if ever. Anyway, thank you for tuning in this evening. Hopefully you learned some stuff about DOM stuff and how JavaScript doesn't have to be all in the land of frameworks. You can use the browser's native APIs to do some stuff and do it quite successfully. It's been fun. Thank you for the comments, and I'll see you next time. Take care.